The grand meeting hall of the Galactic Confederacy buzzed with nervous energy. Beings from 20 different species sat around a large oval table. Some had blue skin, others green scales. A few floated in special tanks of liquid. But they all shared one thing: worry on their faces. High Chancellor Zorix, a tall alien with purple skin and 4 arms, stood at the head of the table. The light from the 3 suns of Centralia Prime shone through the crystal dome above, making his ceremonial robes shimmer. "The reports are confirmed," Zorix said, his voice grave. "An unknown fleet approaches our outer territories. Over 200 ships." A murmur ran through the gathered representatives. Admiral Thelix, the head of Confederate Defense, tapped a control panel. A hologram appeared above the table, showing dots of light moving through space. "The fleet will reach the Vega system in 3 standard days," said Thelix. His gray skin had turned almost white with stress. "Their technology appears advanced. More advanced than our own. Do we know who they are?" asked Representative Lura, her feathered head tilted in concern. Thelix hesitated before answering. "We believe they are Deathworlders." The room fell silent. Even the delegates, who normally never stopped talking, now sat, frozen. Deathworlders. The word alone caused fear. Most species in the Confederacy evolved on what they called garden worlds, or planets with mild weather, few predators, and gentle gravity. But Deathworlders came from nightmare planets with crushing gravity, extreme temperatures, deadly predators, and toxic environments. Such harsh conditions created species that were naturally stronger, faster, and more aggressive than garden worlders. "Which Deathworlders?" asked Zorix, though everyone already suspected the answer. "Likely humans," said Thelix. "They match the flight patterns our scouts observed near Earth." Earth. The Confederacy had discovered the planet just 2 years ago. Their initial scans had been shocking. Earth had variable weather that could kill in hours, over 100,000 species of predators, regular natural disasters, and humans had evolved while being hunted by creatures twice their size. The Confederacy had made careful, distant observations, too afraid to make official contact. "We should evacuate the border systems immediately," said Lura. "Evacuate? That would cause panic," argued Representative Creel of the Commerce Guild. "We should send a diplomatic team. Humans might look scary, but we have no proof they're hostile." Zorix raised his 4 hands for quiet. "Both suggestions have merit. We will prepare evacuations but not announce them yet, and we will send diplomats to meet this fleet." He looked around the table. "Who volunteers for the diplomatic mission?" No one spoke. No one raised a hand or tentacle or wing. Finally, a small voice came from the end of the table. "I will go." All eyes turned to Junior Diplomatic Officer Alara, a young Ardelian with soft blue skin and large eyes. She had only joined the Confederacy service a year ago. "Officer Alara," said Zorix with surprise. "This is a dangerous mission." "I've studied human broadcasts and language," she said, "and someone must go." In the end, a team of 5 was assembled, with Alara as the human expert. The diplomatic vessel, the Peaceful Envoy, was prepared for immediate departure. It was the fastest ship in the Confederate fleet, able to reach the Vega system in just 1 day. As the Peaceful Envoy traveled through hyperspace, Alara studied everything known about humans. They were surprisingly durable creatures. They could survive losing limbs, could heal from terrible injuries, and could adapt to almost any environment. Most concerning, they had spent most of their history fighting each other. If they united and turned that fighting spirit outward— "We're approaching Vega," announced Captain Drem over the ship's communication system. Dropping out of hyperspace in 10 seconds, Alara joined the others on the bridge. The ship slowed and stars became visible again. "There they are," whispered Drem. On the view screen they saw the fleet, but something was wrong. The ships didn't match known human designs. They were angular and black, with red glowing parts that reminded Alara of eyes. "Those aren't human ships," she said, feeling confused. Sensors chimed urgently. "Energy spike," shouted the sensor operator. "They're charging weapons." "Send the peace signal," ordered Drem. "Channel open, broadcasting on all frequencies," replied the communications officer. Alara stepped forward. "Unknown fleet. This is the Confederate vessel Peaceful Envoy. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic—" A bright beam cut through space, striking a nearby Confederate patrol ship. The smaller vessel exploded instantly. Evasive action. yelled Drem as more beams fired toward them. The peaceful envoy shook as a beam grazed its side. Alarms blared throughout the ship. "Get us out of here," Drem ordered. As the ship turned to flee, Alara caught a closer look at one of the attacking vessels. Through the viewscreen, she saw a being on the enemy bridge. It wasn't human. The creature had thick, armored skin, 6 eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. "Send this image to Confederate Command," she told the communications officer, pointing at the screen. "These aren't humans. They're something else." The peaceful envoy jumped to hyperspace, barely escaping. As emergency repairs began, Alara stared at the image they'd captured of the alien commander. The Confederacy had prepared for humans, but these creatures were something new. Something possibly worse. Back on Centralia Prime, Chancellor Zorix received the news with shock. The diplomatic mission had failed. The Vega system was under attack, and the aggressors weren't humans as they had feared. "What are they then?" he asked Admiral Thelix. "Unknown," said Thelix. "But preliminary analysis suggests they're from an even harsher world than Earth. The gravity readings from their ship suggest they evolved on a planet nearly twice Earth's gravity." "Another Deathworld species," said Zorix, slumping in his chair. "And we know nothing about them." "We know they're hostile," said Thelix. "The Vega colonies report heavy attacks. Thousands already dead." Zorix looked out at the peaceful city through his window. The Confederacy had known peace for over 300 years. Their military was mainly ceremonial. How could they fight Deathworlders? "How long until they reach Centralia?" asked Zorix. "At their current pace, 3 months," replied Thelix. "We're mobilizing every ship we have, but our weapons seem ineffective against their armor. Do we have any options?" asked Zorix. Officer Alara, still bandaged from the attack, stepped forward. "There might be one, Chancellor." "Speak, officer." "We know of one other Deathworld species," said Alara. "Humans. You suggest we contact Earth?" asked Zorix, surprised. "The very species we've been avoiding?" "Yes," said Alara. "Deathworlders understand other Deathworlders. Humans might help us understand these new attackers. Or they might join forces with them against us," argued Thelix. "It's a risk," admitted Alara. "But these new aliens have already proven hostile. Humans have not." Zorix considered this. The Confederacy faced extinction. Perhaps it was time to overcome their fear. "Prepare a diplomatic mission to Earth," ordered Zorix. "If we're facing one Deathworld species, perhaps we need another to help us understand what we're up against." As preparations began for the journey to Earth, news arrived from the front. The attackers had conquered 3 more systems. Refugees flooded toward the Confederate core worlds, and the mysterious fleet grew larger as it advanced. In the ship preparation area, Alara watched the latest reports. The unknown aliens had identified themselves in their attacks. They called themselves the Kralax. "The Kralax," she whispered, memorizing the name of this new threat. She hoped humans would listen. She hoped they would help. Because if they didn't, the peaceful Galactic Confederacy would soon be just a memory. The mission to Earth would depart tomorrow. The fate of all Garden Worlders now depended on reaching out to the very species they had feared for so long. 1 month had passed since first contact with the Kralax. 1 terrible month. Admiral Thelix stood before the emergency session of the Confederate Council, his uniform no longer crisp and perfect. His eyes showed he hadn't slept in days. "The Taurus system has fallen," he reported, his voice hollow. "That makes 7 systems lost in 4 weeks." The room filled with gasps and worried whispers. 7 systems meant billions of lives. Some captured, some fled, many dead. High Chancellor Zorix looked older than he had just weeks before. "Tell us about these Kralax. What have we learned?" A scientist stepped forward, Professor Nelb of the Xenobiology Institute. "The Kralax come from a planet we've designated Death Prime," she said. "Our probes show it has nearly double Earth's gravity. The atmosphere contains elements toxic to most life forms. Temperature can change by 50 degrees in a single day. How could anything evolve in such conditions?" asked Representative Lura. "That's just it," said Nelb. "They evolved to be incredibly tough. Their skin is like natural armor. They have redundant organs. They can survive in environments that would kill any of us in minutes." Admiral Thelix activated the room's display system. Images appeared of Kralax warriors. They stood on 2 powerful legs with 4 arms ending in clawed hands. Their skin was thick and gray with red patterns. 6 yellow eyes were set in faces dominated by jaws that could crush bone. Their technology matches their biology, said Thelix. Their ships have armor we can barely dent. Their weapons cut through our shields like they aren't there. What about their demands? Asked Zorix. Have they made any? Just one, said Thelix. Total surrender of all Confederate worlds. Silence fell across the room. The Confederacy spanned 50 star systems with hundreds of planets. Home to trillions of beings from dozens of species, all now threatened with slavery or worse. Our military options? Asked Zorix, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Limited, admitted Thelix. We've lost 40% of our fleet already. The Krelax adapt quickly to our tactics. They seem to view war as natural. Unlike us, said Lura. The Confederacy had enjoyed peace for centuries. Their ships were mainly for show and exploration. Their weapons designed to disable, not destroy. What about the Earth mission? Asked Zorix. Any word from Officer Alara? A communications specialist raised her hand. The diplomatic envoy reports they have made contact with human authorities. Initial discussions are underway. At least something is going right, muttered Zorix. But that small hope was dashed when emergency alerts sounded throughout the room. A harried officer rushed in, nearly tripping in his haste. The Krelax fleet has changed course, he reported breathlessly. They've bypassed our defensive line at Sector 7. They're heading directly for the Arcturus system. Zorix paled. Arcturus? There are 15 billion people on Arcturus Prime alone. Evacuation is impossible, said Thelix. We don't have enough ships. Even if we did, there's no time. Move every available vessel to intercept, ordered Zorix. We must buy time for at least some evacuations. As the emergency session broke up, plans were made and orders given, but everyone knew the truth. The Confederacy was losing and losing badly. On the front lines, the situation was even worse than the leaders knew. Confederate ships fought bravely but were overwhelmed by Krelax tactics and technology. The Garden Worlders had never faced an enemy that seemed to enjoy battle. They pushed forward regardless of losses. Confederate Captain Drem, who had survived the first contact incident, now commanded a small destroyer in the defense of the Arcturus system. His ship, the Vigilant Defender, had already taken heavy damage. Half his crew was dead or wounded. Enemy vessels approaching from Vector 3, reported his sensor officer, a young Talarian whose antenna quivered with fear. Evasive pattern Delta, ordered Drem. Target the lead ship with everything we have. The Vigilant Defender swung around, bringing its main cannon to bear on the approaching Krelax cruiser. Energy built up as the weapon charged. Fire! Commanded Drem. A beam of concentrated energy shot out, striking the Krelax ship directly. For a moment, hope flared in Drem's chest. Then the smoke cleared, showing only minor damage to the enemy vessel. They're returning fire, shouted the sensor officer. Red beams lanced out from the Krelax ship. The Vigilant Defender shuddered as one struck its engine section. Alarms blared throughout the vessel. Direct hit to engines, reported the engineering officer. We're losing power. Reroute emergency systems, ordered Drem, desperately trying to keep his ship in the fight. But he knew it was hopeless. All across the system, Confederate ships were being torn apart by the Krelax fleet. A second hit rocked the ship, throwing Drem from his command chair. As he struggled to his feet, he saw the main view screen showing the Krelax vessels moving past them, heading toward the populated planets of the system. They're not even bothering to finish us off, said the sensor officer. They know we're no threat. That hurt more than the physical damage. The Confederacy's proud fleet, reduced to an annoyance the Krelax didn't even consider worth destroying. Send a message to command, ordered Drem. The defensive line has failed. The Krelax will reach Arcturus Prime within hours. As the message was sent, Drem looked at the damage reports. The Vigilant Defender was crippled but not destroyed. They might be able to limp to a repair station if any still existed nearby. Set course for the nearest Confederate outpost, he ordered. We'll try to save who we can. As the damaged ship slowly turned, Drem watched the Krelax fleet on his monitors. So powerful, so relentless. How could the peaceful Confederacy hope to stand against such a force? Back on Centralia Prime, the horror of the Arcturus attack was still unfolding when Officer Alara's ship returned from Earth. She rushed straight to the emergency command center where Zorix and the other leaders had been working. Non-stop, Chancellor, she said, after being admitted to the inner chamber. I bring word from Earth. Zorix looked up from the holographic map showing the Krelax advance. His eyes were sunken from lack of sleep. Tell me you bring good news. Officer Alara, we desperately need some. The humans have agreed to send representatives, said Alara. A delegation led by someone called Admiral Helena Chen will arrive within 2 days. Just representatives? Asked Thelix with disappointment. We need ships, weapons, their fleet, not their diplomats. Admiral Chen is bringing a small team to assess the situation first, explained Alara. But she has authority to request their military if needed. If needed? Thelix laughed bitterly. Arcturus has fallen. 15 billion dead or captured. How much worse must it get before they consider help needed? Ilara had no answer. The humans had been cautious during her meeting with them. They'd asked many questions about the Confederacy and the Krelax, but revealed little about themselves. They had agreed to help, but on their own terms. We should be grateful they're coming at all, said Zorix, silencing Thelix's complaints. We've avoided contact with them for years, fearing what Deathworlders might do to our peaceful society. Now we ask for their help against another Deathworld species. They have every right to be cautious. Did you learn anything else about humans during your visit? Asked Lura. Alara nodded. They're more complex than our studies suggested. Yes, they evolved on a dangerous world and have a history of conflict, but they also create beautiful art, music, and literature. They care deeply for their young and their elderly. They show kindness to other species on their planet. Let us hope that kindness extends to species from other planets, said Zorix, because if not, I fear the Confederacy's days are numbered. 2 days later, a single human ship arrived at Centralia Prime. It was smaller than expected, sleek and silver with blue markings. It docked at the main spaceport without ceremony. Admiral Helena Chen was not what the Confederate leaders expected either. She was of average height for a human, with short black hair streaked with gray. She wore a simple dark blue uniform with minimal decorations. Her face showed both intelligence and wariness. Admiral Chen greeted Zorix in the private reception area. On behalf of the Galactic Confederacy, I welcome you to Centralia Prime. Chancellor Zorix, responded Chen with a polite nod. Thank you for your welcome. I understand your situation is dire. That is an understatement, said Thelix, unable to hide his frustration. While we stand here exchanging pleasantries, the Krelax destroy another of our worlds. If Chen was offended by his tone, she didn't show it. Then we should get to work immediately. My team needs access to all information you have on the Krelax. Battle records, communications, any captured technology, everything. Of course, said Zorix. We've prepared a command center for your use. As they walked through the grand corridors of the Confederate Center, Chen studied everything with keen eyes. Ilara, who had been assigned as liaison to the human team, noticed how the Admiral missed nothing. Her gaze took in the building's layout, the positions of security personnel, the technology in use. Your species has achieved much, said Chen to Zorix. It's impressive. 300 years of peace gave us time to build, replied Zorix. But now we face an enemy that lives for war, not peace. That remains to be seen, said Chen cryptically. In the command center, Chen's team of 12 humans, scientists, military strategists, and technical experts immediately set to work. They reviewed battle footage, studied Krelax ship dossier week passed since Admiral Chen sent her message to Earth. The Krelax continued their advance, taking 2 more systems despite the Confederacy's best defensive efforts. The leaders gathered daily in the war room, hoping for news from Earth. Perhaps they decided not to help after all, said Representative Creel, voicing what many had begun to fear. Admiral Thelix shook his head. If that were the case, Chen would have told us. Humans may be Deathworlders, but they've been honest in their dealings so far. The conversation halted as Admiral Chen entered the room. She looked tired but focused, like someone who had been working through the night. Admiral Chen, greeted Chancellor Zorix. Any word from your homeworld? Yes, she replied. The human defensive armada has been mobilized. It will arrive in Confederate space within 3 days. Relief washed over the room, quickly followed by confusion. 3 days? Asked Thelix. But Earth is nearly 20 light-years from here. Even with your fastest ships, Chen's expression remained neutral. Our jump drive technology is more advanced than we previously disclosed. This revelation sent murmurs through the gathered leaders. The humans had hidden capabilities from the Confederacy. What else were they hiding? While we wait, continued Chen, my team has developed several strategies to slow the Kralax advance. She activated the room's holographic display, showing Confederate defensive positions. Your ships have been engaging the Kralax head-on, she said. This plays to their strengths. Instead, we suggest hit-and-run tactics. Strike their supply lines here, here, and here. She pointed to different points on the map. Don't try to win battles. Just slow them down until the Armada arrives. Thelix studied the suggested tactics. These could work, he admitted. But our captains aren't trained for such maneuvers. My officers are already preparing training simulations, said Chen. We can have your crews ready within 24 hours. Again, the Confederacy representatives exchanged glances. The humans worked with incredible speed and efficiency. There's more, said Chen, changing the display to show a Kralax warship. We've identified a weakness in their communication system. A properly tuned electromagnetic pulse could temporarily disable their ship-to-ship coordination. How could you determine this? Asked Professor Nelb. We've been studying their technology for weeks and found nothing. Chen hesitated before answering. Let's just say humans have extensive experience with electronic warfare. This did little to ease the growing concerns among the Confederate leaders. Yes, the humans were helping, but they were proving to be far more advanced and militaristic than anyone had suspected. Officer Alara, who had been quietly observing from the side of the room, spoke up. How large is this armada that's coming? Chen turned to her. Large enough. The vague answer hung in the air until Zorix cleared his throat. We're grateful for Earth's assistance. Admiral Chen, please convey our thanks to your leaders. I will, said Chen. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to coordinate with my team. After Chen left, the room exploded in whispered conversations. They've been hiding their true capabilities, said Thelix. Who knows what else they're not telling us? Does it matter? Asked Lura. The Kralax will destroy us all if we don't get help. But what if the humans have their own agenda? Countered Creel. We might be trading one Deathworld threat for another. Zorix raised his hands for silence. What choice do we have? The Kralax offer only destruction. At least the humans offer assistance. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. Human officers worked alongside Confederate crews, teaching them new tactics and helping modify their weapons. Chen's team moved throughout the Confederate fleet, upgrading systems and training gunners. The first test of the new tactics came when a Kralax scouting party entered the Proxima system. Rather than engage directly, the Confederate ships followed Chen's plan, striking quickly before jumping away, then appearing elsewhere to strike again. For the first time, a Confederate force repelled a Kralax attack without losing a single ship. News of the victory spread quickly, raising morale throughout Confederate space. But the real test would come when the main Kralax fleet arrived. For that, they needed the human defensive armada. On the third day, sensors detected multiple jump signatures at the edge of the Centralia system. Everyone in the command center held their breath, fearing it might be the Kralax arriving ahead of schedule. Incoming ships identified, announced the sensor operator. They're human. The main screen activated, showing space outside Centralia. Jaws dropped around the room. Ships were appearing. Not a few ships. Not a dozen. Hundreds of vessels materialized, ranging from small, sleek fighters to massive carriers and dreadnoughts. They moved with perfect coordination, forming a defensive screen around the Confederate homeworld. By the three suns, whispered Zorix. That's not an armada. That's an entire war fleet. Admiral Chen stood straighter, a hint of pride breaking through her professional demeanor. The human defensive armada as requested. The central ship of the armada, a massive dreadnought nearly 2 kilometers long, hailed the Confederate command center. The screen changed to show the bridge of the vessel. A stern-faced human man in a uniform similar to Chen's appeared. This is Fleet Admiral Ramirez of the Earth Alliance vessel Determination. We are here to assist the Galactic Confederacy against the Kralax threat. Fleet Admiral, greeted Zorix, struggling to maintain his composure. Your arrival is most timely. The Confederacy welcomes the human defensive armada. After the formalities, Chen led a group of Confederate leaders to the Determination for a strategy meeting. The human ship dwarfed the Confederate shuttle that transported them. Inside, the corridors bustled with activity as crew members moved with purpose. The ship's war room was a marvel of technology. Three-dimensional holographic displays showed the positions of both Confederate and Krelax forces throughout the sector. Human officers studied the displays, making adjustments and discussing options. Fleet Admiral Ramirez greeted them with a firm handshake. A human custom Zorix had been briefed about. The Admiral was tall for a human, with dark skin and close-cropped gray hair. His eyes showed intelligence and determination. "Chancellor, representatives of the Confederacy," he said. "I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." "As do we," replied Zorix, "but we are grateful for your assistance." "Before we discuss strategy," said Ramirez, "I believe some context is necessary." He nodded to a nearby officer who adjusted the main display. "What you're seeing is classified information about Earth and the Earth Alliance." The display showed images of Earth from space, then zoomed in to show its cities, infrastructure, and defenses. "When the Confederacy discovered Earth 2 years ago, we detected your observation satellites," explained Ramirez. "Rather than announce ourselves immediately, we decided to learn more about the galactic community first." "You knew we were watching?" asked Thelix with surprise. "Yes," said Ramirez. "We've been aware of your presence for some time. Your stealth technology is functional but not designed to hide from a species that evolved as both predator and prey." The display changed to show human ships and defense systems, many far more advanced than what the Confederacy had observed. "Humans have been preparing for possible hostile contact since our first steps into space," continued Ramirez. "We hoped for peaceful relations but prepared for conflict. It's our way." "Prepare for the worst, hope for the best," quoted Alara, remembering Chen's words. "Exactly," nodded Ramirez. "The Armada you see represents about 60% of our total military strength. The rest remains defending Earth and our colonies." The Confederate leaders exchanged glances. The fleet they had seen was only a portion of human military power. It was already larger than the entire Confederate Navy at its height. "Why show us this now?" asked Zorix. "Transparency builds trust," said Ramirez. "And we need trust to defeat the Krelax. They're a formidable enemy, one that requires our full cooperation." The display changed again, showing detailed analysis of Krelax ships, weapons, and tactics. "Admiral Chen's team has provided excellent preliminary analysis," said Ramirez. "Based on their findings, we've developed a comprehensive strategy to counter the Krelax advance." For the next hour, Ramirez and his officers outlined their plan. It was unlike anything the Confederate military would have devised. Rather than simply defending, the humans proposed a series of strategic strikes to divide and isolate Krelax forces, followed by concentrated attacks to eliminate them piecemeal. "This is very aggressive," commented Thelix. "Against an opponent like the Krelax, aggressive is necessary," replied Ramirez. "They respect strength and exploit weakness. We must speak a language they understand." The meeting continued with discussions of logistics, coordination between human and Confederate forces, and evacuation plans for civilian populations in threatened systems. Throughout it all, Ilara observed the humans with fascination. They moved and spoke with confidence born of experience. These weren't beings who theorized about conflict. They understood it intimately. As the meeting concluded, Ramirez addressed the Confederate leaders directly. "I want to be clear about something. We're not here to conquer or control. Once the Krelax threat is eliminated, the human armada will withdraw from Confederate SPGNs." The massive view screen in the Confederate Command Center showed the approaching Krelax fleet. Over 300 ships moved in tight formation, their black hulls with glowing red accents making them look like predators stalking through space. Chancellor Zorix stood with Admiral Thelix, Officer Ilara, and other Confederate leaders. Their faces showed tension and fear. Despite the arrival of the human defensive armada, the Krelax force was still terrifying to behold. "They'll reach our outer defense line in 30 minutes, reported a sensor officer, her voice shaking slightly. The door to the command center slid open, and Admiral Chen entered along with Fleet Admiral Ramirez. The two human officers studied the display calmly. "They've brought their entire fleet," noted Chen. "Just as we hoped." "Hoped?" asked Thelix in disbelief. "You wanted them to bring more ships?" Ramirez nodded. "It means they're taking us seriously, and it means they've left their conquered territories lightly defended." The human admiral activated his communication device. "All ships, this is Fleet Admiral Ramirez. The enemy approaches. Remember your training and trust your comrades. Implementation of Operation Hammer and Anvil in 20 minutes. Ramirez out. He turned to the Confederate leaders. Chancellor Zorix, with your permission, the human armada will take the lead in this engagement. Permission granted, said Zorix quickly. What remained of the Confederate fleet was no match for the Kralax. Their best hope lay with these unexpected human allies. On the view screen, the human armada began to move. Ships rearranged themselves with practiced precision. Larger vessels formed a central core, while smaller, faster ships moved to the flanks. Fighter craft launched from carriers forming protective screens. What is Operation Hammer and Anvil? Asked Alara, curiosity overcoming her fear. A classic pincer movement, explained Chen, but with some human innovations. Before she could elaborate, the Kralax fleet entered weapons range. Red energy beams lanced out from the leading ships, targeting the forward elements of the human armada. To the surprise of the Confederate observers, the human ships didn't return fire immediately. Instead, they performed evasive maneuvers, dodging many of the Kralax attacks while absorbing others with their shields. Why aren't they firing back? Asked Thelix with growing concern. Patience, Admiral, said Ramirez, his eyes fixed on the battle display. He was watching a countdown timer that had appeared in one corner. When it reached 0, he nodded to a communications officer. Now. Suddenly, the human fleet split into 3 groups. The central force continued forward, while the 2 flanking elements accelerated rapidly, swinging out wide to either side of the Kralax formation. At the same moment, a second wave of human ships appeared behind the Kralax fleet, dropping out of jump space with perfect timing. The Kralax were now caught between 2 human forces. The hammer, said Chen, pointing to the forces closing from the sides, and the anvil. She indicated the ships that had appeared behind the Kralax. Only then did the human vessels open fire, but they didn't use energy weapons like those of the Confederacy or the Kralax. Instead, missiles streaked from hundreds of launch tubes, each leaving a blue trail as it accelerated toward its target. The Kralax attempted to shoot down the incoming projectiles, but there were too many. Explosions bloomed across their formation as missiles found their marks. The special electromagnetic pulses that Chen's team had designed disrupted Kralax communications and targeting systems. In the confusion, human fighters swooped in, targeting engine sections and weapons arrays with precision strikes. Remarkable, whispered Thelix. They're targeting specific systems, not trying to destroy the ships outright. Maximum damage with minimum force, said Chen. Another human principle. Why destroy an entire ship when disabling its engines and weapons accomplishes the same goal? The battle continued for hours. The Kralax fought fiercely, but they were outmatched by human coordination and tactics. Their aggressive, direct approach that had overwhelmed Confederate defenses proved ineffective against the more flexible human strategy. By the time the fighting ended, 80 Kralax ships had been destroyed. Another 150 were disabled, drifting powerless in space. The rest had retreated, jumping away to safety. The human armada had lost 23 ships with another 40 damaged but repairable. It was a decisive victory. In the Confederate command center, silence gave way to cheers and tears of relief. For the first time since the Kralax appeared, hope felt justified rather than desperate. Chancellor Zorix, said Admiral Ramirez, his uniform showing signs of the battle's stress despite his calm demeanor. Phase 1 is complete. With your approval, we'll begin Phase 2 immediately. What is Phase 2? Asked Zorix. Liberation of conquered territories, replied Ramirez. The Kralax main fleet is crippled. Now we take back what they've stolen. The following week saw the human armada spread throughout Confederate space, systematically attacking Kralax occupation forces. The humans adapted their tactics for each situation. Sometimes they used overwhelming force. Other times, small special operations teams infiltrated Kralax positions to rescue prisoners or disable critical systems. On planets where the Kralax had established ground forces, human marines deployed to the surface. These troops, wearing powered armor suits that enhanced their already considerable strength, engaged the Kralax warriors directly. Officer Alara, now serving as the official Confederate liaison to the human forces, observed one such ground operation from a command shuttle above AI colony on Proxima 4. The planet had been one of the first captured by the Kralax and had endured 2 months of occupation. Through the shuttle's viewing system, She watched human soldiers move through the colony's streets, clearing buildings and engaging Kralax troops. The humans worked in small teams using cover and coordination to overcome the physically stronger Kralax. "Your soldiers fight well," she said to Chen, who stood beside her, "even against opponents twice their size." "Humans have always had to overcome physically superior predators," replied Chen. "We learned early that brains can beat brawn." The screen showed a squad of humans, outflanking a group of Kralax warriors, forcing them into a crossfire. Another team was helping colonists evacuate a threatened area. "They seem to adapt to any environment," noted Alara, as the battle moved from the colony streets to the dense jungle at its edge. "That's one advantage of evolving on Earth," said Chen. "Our planet has almost every type of environment. Deserts, jungles, mountains, oceans, Arctic regions. Humans learn to survive in all of them." A message came through from the ground forces. The colony center had been secured. Kralax forces were retreating to their landing ships. "Another victory," said Chen. "That makes 17 planets liberated in 3 weeks." Back on Centralia Prime, Chancellor Zorix and the Confederate Council received regular updates on the liberation campaign. Each day brought news of another system freed from Kralax control, another population rescued. But with the good news came disturbing reports. The humans fought with efficiency, yes, but also with a ferocity that shocked many Confederate observers. "They seem to understand the Kralax in ways the Garden Worlders could not. It's like they speak the same language," commented Representative Laura during a council session. "A language of violence." "Not violence," corrected Thelix, who had been working closely with the human military command. "Strength. Both species respect strength, though they express it differently." Indeed, captured Kralax showed more willingness to communicate with humans than they ever had with Confederate representatives. Something about human behavior made sense to them in a way the Garden Worlders' peaceful overtures never had. 4 weeks into the liberation campaign, Fleet Admiral Ramirez requested a meeting with the full Confederate Council. He arrived with Admiral Chen and a team of human analysts. "Chancellor, representatives," he began, "we've made significant progress against the Kralax. 70% of occupied territories have been liberated. The enemy is in full retreat." Cheers and applause filled the council chamber. Ramirez waited for quiet before continuing. "However, our intelligence suggests the Kralax are consolidating their remaining forces for a last, desperate offensive. They've pulled back to the Arcturus system and appear to be preparing for a final stand." "Arcturus?" asked Zorix. "Why there?" A human intelligence officer stepped forward. "We believe they're planning to use the system's dense asteroid fields for cover. They're also fortifying the third planet as a stronghold." "How do you recommend we proceed, Admiral?" asked Zorix. "A direct assault would be costly," said Ramirez. "Even with our advantages. The Kralax in a defensive posture will be difficult to dislodge without significant casualties on both sides." "You have an alternative in mind," guessed Thelix. "We do," confirmed Ramirez. "Our science team has been studying Kralax communication patterns. We believe we can send a message they might actually respond to." "You want to negotiate?" asked Zorix with surprise. "After all they've done?" "Not exactly negotiate," said Chen, "but communicate in terms they understand. Offer them an alternative to extinction." The council erupted in discussion. Many representatives opposed any communication with the Kralax, arguing they deserved no mercy after the billions they had killed. Others saw the wisdom in ending the conflict without further bloodshed. In the end, Zorix made the decision. What do you need if the meeting place was a barren moon orbiting the fourth planet of the Arcturus system? Its surface was gray and pockmarked with craters, with no atmosphere to speak of. A temporary structure had been erected near the largest crater, a simple dome with airlocks on opposite sides. Human shuttles approached from one direction, Kralax vessels from the other. Both sides had agreed to bring only 10 representatives. With minimal weapons, a gesture of trust the humans had suggested, though no one truly believed either side was defenseless. Officer Alara accompanied the human delegation as the Confederate witness. She wore an environmental suit similar to the humans, though hers required additional systems to compensate for her Ardelian biology. The humans moved with confidence in their suits, clearly accustomed to operating in hostile environments. "Nervous?" asked Admiral Chen, walking beside her. "A little," admitted Alara. "I never expected to be face-to-face with the Kralax without a weapon between us." There are always weapons between intelligent species, said Chen. Sometimes they're just hidden beneath words and smiles. The human team entered the dome first, removing their helmets once the airlock sealed and the interior pressurized. Admiral Ramirez led the way, followed by Chen, Dr. Khan, and several military and scientific personnel. Elara stayed near the back, there to observe more than participate. Minutes later, the opposite airlock cycled. War leader Kresh entered, flanked by Kralax warriors and what appeared to be advisors. Without their battle armor, the Kralax looked slightly less menacing, though still imposing. Their gray skin had a leathery texture, and the red patterns were clearly natural markings, not paint or decoration as some had thought. Both groups took positions at opposite sides of a large round table in the center of the dome. For a moment, silence filled the space as humans and Kralax studied each other openly for the first time. Ramirez spoke first. War leader Kresh, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. The Kralax leader made a gesture with his upper right hand that might have been their equivalent of a nod. Admiral Ramirez, your warriors fight with skill uncommon among soft-worlders. It would be wasteful to continue without exploring alternatives. My thoughts exactly, said Ramirez. Before we discuss terms, I believe understanding is needed. Dr. Khan has studied your communications and has some questions if you're willing. Kresh turned his 6 eyes toward the human scientist. Ask, I will answer if I choose. Dr. Khan stepped forward. War leader, we know the Kralax homeworld orbits a dying star. Radiation levels have been increasing for decades. Your people needed new worlds. Is this correct? The Kralax advisors shifted uncomfortably, but Kresh showed no reaction. You are well informed, human. Yes, our ancestral world becomes more toxic with each passing cycle. Our scientists predict it will be completely uninhabitable within 20 years. And the Confederacy worlds you conquered, they were to be colony worlds for your people? Continued Khan. Yes, said Kresh, though few proved suitable without significant modification. Garden worlders prefer conditions too soft for our needs. Ramirez leaned forward. And did you attempt to negotiate for these worlds first? To explain your situation to the Confederacy? For the first time, something like frustration showed in the Kralax leader's posture. We sent envoys to 3 border systems. They were met with fear and rejected without hearing. The soft ones saw our appearance and judged us unworthy of conversation. Elara felt a chill run through her. The Confederacy had received reports of unknown ships approaching border systems months before the invasion began. Had those been peaceful Kralax attempts at contact? Had fear of their Deathworld appearance led to a tragic misunderstanding? The Confederacy regrets any miscommunication, she said, speaking for the first time. All eyes, human and Kralax, turned to her. We were unaccustomed to dealing with species from worlds like yours. Our caution was misinterpreted as rejection. Words matter little now, said Kresh. Actions have been taken that cannot be undone. True, agreed Ramirez. But future actions can still be chosen. That's why we're here. The meeting continued for hours. The Kralax explained their desperate search for new worlds, driven by the imminent destruction of their home. They had encountered other civilizations before finding the Confederacy, but most had reacted with hostility to their appearance. After multiple rejections, the Kralax leadership had decided conquest was their only option. We require worlds with specific conditions, explained a Kralax scientist named Vex. High gravity, certain atmospheric compositions, particular radiation levels. Few inhabited worlds match our needs. But there are uninhabited worlds that might, said Dr. Khan. We've been analyzing stellar data from throughout this sector. There are at least 7 planets within human space alone that meet your requirements. Harsh worlds that humans found unsuitable for colonization. This revelation clearly surprised the Kralax. You would offer your own worlds? Asked Kresh. We would, confirmed Ramirez. With conditions, of course. Non-aggression pacts, trade agreements, cultural exchange programs, standard diplomatic relations. And the Confederacy? Asked Kresh, turning to Elara. What does your government offer beyond words of regret? Elara hesitated. She had not been authorized to make specific offers. I cannot speak officially for the Chancellor, but I believe the Confederacy would be open to peace negotiations, especially with human mediation. Kresh made a sound that might have been skepticism. The soft ones fear us. They would never accept Kralax living near their precious worlds. Fear can be overcome through understanding, said Chen. Humans once feared each other simply because of different appearances. We learned better. The Confederacy can too. As the meeting neared its conclusion, Ramirez presented a formal proposal: an immediate ceasefire, withdrawal of Kralak's forces from Confederate space, and the beginning of a three-way diplomatic process to establish permanent peace. In exchange, humans would provide the Kralaks with access to suitable colony worlds and technological assistance to speed their evacuation from their dying home system. Kresh and his advisors conferred in their own language, their discussion animated but impossible for others to understand. Finally, the war leader turned back to the human delegation. Your terms are acceptable. As a starting point, he said, I will present them to the High Command, but I require proof of your sincerity. Show us these worlds you offer. Let our scientists evaluate them. Agreed, said Ramirez without hesitation. We can arrange transport for a scientific delegation immediately. With that, the meeting concluded. Both sides returned to their ships, carrying news of the first successful communication between the species. Aboard the human shuttle returning to the Determination, Ilara sat in thoughtful silence. Admiral Chen noticed her expression. Something troubles you, Officer Ilara? I'm trying to understand what happened today, replied Ilara. How did you humans accomplish in hours what the Confederacy couldn't in months of conflict? The Kralaks refused all our attempts at communication. Chen smiled slightly. Because you tried to communicate as Garden Worlders. We spoke as fellow Deathworlders, meaning Garden Worlds breed cooperation, community, harmony, explained Chen. Beautiful qualities, but they create expectations that all species share those values. Deathworlds breed strength, caution, and respect for power. The Kralaks didn't respond to offers of friendship because they don't value friendship the way you do. They responded to demonstrated strength followed by conditional offers. And you understood this because humans share that perspective, said Ilara, beginning to comprehend. To a degree, acknowledged Chen. Earth isn't as harsh as the Kralaks' homeworld, but it taught us similar lessons. Respect must be earned, strength must be proven. Then, and only then, can trust begin to grow. When they returned to Centralia Prime, Chancellor Zorix received the news of the preliminary agreement with a mixture of relief and disbelief. They agreed to withdraw, just like that? He asked during the debriefing. Not just like that, corrected Ramirez. We offered something they desperately need, suitable worlds for their population. And we demonstrated that continued fighting would be costly for them. Still, to go from total war to diplomatic talks so quickly, Zorix shook his head in wonder. The Kralaks are practical, said Chen. Once they recognized humans as equals worthy of respect, cooperation became a viable option. In the days that followed, a ceasefire held throughout Confederate space. Kralak's forces began withdrawing from occupied systems, though they maintained defensive positions until the final agreements were signed. A Kralak scientific team, escorted by human ships, toured the proposed colony worlds. They found 3 that were immediately suitable, and 4 others that could be adapted with reasonable effort. Meanwhile, on Centralia Prime, representatives from all 3 species, human, Confederate, and Kralaks, gathered to hammer out the details of a permanent peace accord. The negotiations were not easy. Centuries of distrust between Garden Worlders and Deathworlders couldn't be erased in days. The Confederacy demanded reparations for destroyed worlds and billions of lives lost. The Kralaks argued they had acted out of existential necessity, not malice. Humans served as mediators, sometimes forcefully keeping both sides at the Rome USA